All right. You're listening to the Wandering Chronicles podcast with your host. I am Ashley. And
I'm Jamie.
Hi, Jamie. How are you today?
I sound like this today.
You sound better than last week.
Do I?
Yeah.
I feel better. I feel a lot better, but I kind of think I sound worse.
No, I think you sound better.
Oh yeah, I feel fine.
Yeah.
I didn't. It was a long week. I convinced myself I had COVID. I didn't.
Thank God.
Spoiler alert, I went and got tested. It's just your run-of-the-mill
Cold?
average asthma. No.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel fine. I ended up taking 2 days off work last week because I felt awful, and it's been a slow road, but I'm back, baby.
Ooh, with that sultry voice again. Love it.
What about you? How's you been? How's you been?
English is hard.
Yeah, it's my second language. My first one is Pig Latin.
Oh, okay. Good to know. So, I had a crazy day. First of all, CTA is doing work on the Brown Line track, so that just ruined like half my day. And then I was walking back from the grocery store like maybe 45 minutes ago, and this woman on the sidewalk with her dog, and her dog's like refusing to move. So I'm like, "Do you want me to go to the other side of the sidewalk and like I'll move around?" She's like, "Yeah, he just has to sniff every snowflake." I'm like, "Well, they are all different." And I heard her laugh. I was like, "Okay."
I have an update speaking of snow and sidewalks.
Okay.
You know the beginning of this story, but I have an update.
Okay.
I'm going to tell the whole story because not everyone does, but I'll do the abbreviated version.
Yes.
So yesterday was like the first day I really felt good. So I was sitting on my couch reading my book, and I noticed this we had a snowstorm last week, just to preface everything. We had a snowstorm last week. St. Louis snowstorm means maybe 6 inches of snow. It wasn't crazy, but it's more than St. Louis really knows how to deal with on the regular. And there was a car parked on the side of the road next to my apartment with Texas plates. Mm-hmm. They even more so don't know how to deal with the snow. They were just not used to it. So I didn't really think a lot of it, but it was plowed in from like every direction because it's been there since before the snowstorm. And I noticed this kid, he's probably like late high school, early college age, come out with a giant metal bowl and attempt to start digging his car out, which kind of is smart. If you don't have a shovel, I don't know that I would have thought of that, but he clearly wasn't like invested in getting out because he abandoned the bowl really quickly and climbed into the back seat of his car to get his scraper, which was like 6 inches long at most.
Oh, honey, that's not going to help you. Not with what you...
I know. I have like a radiating, like you can telescope it out so you can reach the top of the car.
Yeah.
Like, that's some serious snow people. No, he had this tiny little thing, and he starts just so pathetically scraping off his windshield. Like, he's clearly not wanting to do it. And every time someone, like, walks by, because I'm in St. Louis, there are people, there's a lot of foot traffic here. He kind of looks at him like,
help?
Maybe they'll help me.
Help?
No one's gonna help you, brother. They all dealt with all their shit already. So, eventually, he just abandons that, too, and stands on the sidewalk and just stares at his car for, I'm not kidding, at least 5 minutes.
I mean, the video you sent me was so funny. At least in the video, a good, like, minute and a half of him just standing there. Just in what you sent me.
And you got to see people walk by.
Yeah, oh, there was the couple that walked by, and he, like, looked at them and then, like, looked down because he realized they weren't going to help him. And you could see his, like, shoulders drop. It was... I felt really bad laughing, but at the same time, it was the funniest thing I had seen all day.
Oh, it was so funny. I have a story about that couple, too. But anyway, he eventually abandoned all hope and went inside. And, like, an hour later, so after you and I spoke, I noticed a DoorDash delivery driver pull up right next to the car, and he met them out there to get his McDonald's. He was clearly just trying to leave to go get food.
Oh my God.
And so he got his McDonald's. The car is still there. It hasn't moved.
Hasn't been dug out yet either?
Oh, no. I mean, a good half of the snow that was on it probably melted off today because it was pretty nice out today.
Yeah, it was all melting today. It was great.
Yeah, so he could probably drive out of there now, although I don't know if he'll try. But that couple, after all that happened, that couple walked by the other direction, screaming at each other. With, like, they clearly had gone to the liquor store. That was their destination. Mind you, this is o'clock in the morning. I don't remember. It's morning. I'm having my coffee. They're screaming at each other, fighting over the price of whatever booze they bought. Like, my neighborhood is fun.
Yeah. You have a good view of, like, people just walking by and doing some stuff. Like, I see people outside my apartment every once in a while doing stuff. Or, there's this guy who likes to sit out in front of my apartment in his car and just blast rap.
Yeah. I have very little of that. In fact, I don't think I ever hear people's music. They probably hear mine. I guess I don't really know if they'll hear mine or not because I'm not hearing theirs.
Yeah.
It's a little easier to judge your neighbors when they're also making sounds. But what I do have in the summer, and this will become a problem probably when we record in the summer, are crotch rockets galore just going by my apartment and doing wheelies all fucking day, all fucking night. Every guy with a tiny penis drives by my apartment and does a wheelie from like 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. every day in the summer if it's over 60 degrees.
I'm just glad we don't record in the morning because on the weekends and on weekdays, I hear this dog that sounds like it's getting tortured. I know it's just like reacting to other dogs on the street, but it sounds like it's yelping and screaming, but that's just like its bark, I think. Because I hear it all the time. And it's not like the guy, like I've looked out the window, it's like this tiny little white poodle dog. And the guy's just like standing there staring at the dog and it's just like screaming, but it sounds like it's being tortured, but it's just like on the street screaming. Like it's not even being pulled or anything, and there's like a dog across the street and he's just freaking out. But
it's just a yipper.
It's something beyond yipper. It's like unholy. Like the dog is summoning a demon.
I have a neighbor in this building who has 2 big dogs. One of them's fine. The other one is a demon and barks. Every time they leave their apartment, you can hear him. He barks if he hears you moving in your apartment.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I fucking live here. I'm allowed to move in my apartment. The cats used to be terrified, but now they're just like, come at me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't hear him so much in my apartment when he's in his. If I leave my apartment, I can hear him barking in his apartment. But in my apartment, I don't hear him. So that's good. I just hear my D-bag neighbor.
Mr. Punchy?
Mr. Punchy.
Yeah.
Who, I'm so sorry. We're just going off on a tangent. Anyway, every time my loud-ass neighbor takes his trash out, it sounds like it sounded when I would take the trash out at the end of the night when I worked at the bar.
Oh, gosh.
It's just glass.
Oh.
It's just glass. And I'm just like, story checks out.
That fits.
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn a lot about people that live around you when you live in an apartment. It's like hard not to find out about them.
It's true. And in a city. In an apartment and in a city.
Like,
so I also have like my not in my building neighbors that I watch, like Hot Dad. There's a Hot Dad that walks by every day and I'm like, oh, there's Hot Dad. Hot Dad must have had a meeting today because Hot Dad's wearing meeting clothes.
So last night while I was trying to fall asleep, because one, I didn't finish writing this podcast, like this episode, until 4 in the morning. I was up until like 3:45 writing this because I was like,
no, thank you.
I'm like, it's a weekend, I can sleep in a little bit, and I did. But like, like 4 in the morning, I hear what sounds like squeaking and clogs. Like my upstairs neighbor is having sex while wearing clogs and like dancing, but like the bed is squeaking.
Are your upstairs neighbors Dutch?
I don't know. I've lived here for almost 8 years. I've never met a single person who lives above me. But, like, it feels like every other year I hit somebody who's really loud in a weird way. Like, not a normal way. It's like, they make noise in a way that I'm just like, what combination of things are you doing to get what sounds like an elephant on a trampoline up there? Like, what is going on with you? I once heard my neighbor upstairs scream during a football game. Like, I knew it was a Sunday night football game. And I hear him go, no!
Well,
through the ceiling.
Yeah, my neighbor does that all the time. But at least I understand that yelling because dudes get emotional about sports.
Sports ball does make mad men. What?
Mad. I heard that was a show once.
I heard tell of a show called Mad Men.
Let's learn about what story do you have to tell me this week?
We're gonna flap our arms and travel to Philly. That's how we're getting there this week.
I don't think you want to do that. That sounds like it could be painful.
I mean,
for me. Not you.
No, it would be painful for me too. But
I'll just walk.
I hitchhiked last week, so I gotta flap my arms. I got the legs last week. I got the arms this week. So
it's arm day.
It's arm. Never skip arm day. Okay, so
that's Popeye.
That was a very top-heavy man. So, we're gonna be talking about Philadelphia, and I have a simultaneous story about two people from Philly.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised on the playground is where I spend most of my days. Chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, and I was shooting some b-ball outside of the school when a couple of guys, they were up to no good, started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fight and my mom got scared. She said, "You're moving with your auntie and uncle in Bel Air." I got it.
So, I will be mentioning West Philadelphia, and I was half expecting you to break out into song at that point, but you did
you
it.
should have told me that ahead of time. I blew my load.
I'm sorry you blew your load early, okay?
God damn it. Now I understand how my neighbor feels.
Do you want to go punch some walls?
I hope he never finds out about this podcast.
I'm gonna send him an anonymous note.
That would make for some very awkward hallway interactions.
So, I'm Mr. Punchy?
I mean, that seems fairly obvious now, doesn't it, sir?
Sir.
He's also named after a celebrity. What is it with dudes in my life being named after characters or celebrities?
Yeah, you really do have a theme. Okay, I'm going to get into the story because this is actually going to be a long one. I'm going to give a little bit of a warning because there will be some violence towards people of color. I don't go into it very much, but one of the people I'm talking to was notoriously racist. So...
Talking about?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Frank Rizzo, the former mayor, former police commissioner, and John Africa. So...
I know this story. Briefly. I'm sure I'm gonna learn a lot.
Yeah,
I know who these people are at least.
This is I'm kind of doing an abridged version because if I didn't, it would be a 6-page story, and it's already like a solid 3, so we're gonna have a long one. So I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Whew, this was
more content.
Finding out that I was gonna be researching people of Philadelphia was like jumping into an Olympic-sized swimming pool and having to pick something. And there are way too many options. There were some really good options. There's just a lot. But given that Philadelphia is one of the oldest cities in this country and the former capital of this country, there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on a city that I'm sure we all know, but still good to know that, you know, it's the 12th oldest and it is the former capital of the country until 1801.
I know about cheesesteaks.
Yes, and I also found out that, like, breakdown of what Philadelphia means really is, like, brotherly love. Like, it's kind of cool. So it's not just, like, a nickname.
I like that.
Yeah, it really does, like, break down to brotherly love, essentially. It's kind of cool. But it also has kind of a racist history, so not so much brotherly love.
So does pretty much this entire country and... probably a lot of
countries.
The planet.
Yeah. So let's just rip into this one. Like I said, I will be talking to you about John Africa, who was one of the founders of Move, and Frank Lazaro Rizzo. So
stay away from men named Francis.
Go back to episode 1. Oh, Francis. So I want to say it because I put this in my notes, but fuck you, Frank. And actually, I want to also say my dad was the one who recommended I look into Frank Rizzo. I'd heard of him before. I'd listened to a podcast about him before. But doing actual research on him was really interesting. So thank you, Dad.
Way to go, Dr. Ashley's dad.
So these two guys actually had kind of a similar early start to life. So Frank Rizzo and John Africa were both born in Philadelphia. Frank,
born and raised.
They both were born and died in Philadelphia.
I'm sorry, I'm punchy. Speaking of punchy, my name's
We're
Jamie.
recording at 7:00 at night. I think we're both going to be a little punchy. So, Frank was born October 23rd, 1920. He grew up in South Philadelphia. He dropped out of high school in his senior year and joined the Navy. He served about 19 months, was given a medical discharge for diabetes insipidus, which is essentially a condition characterized by large amounts of dilute urine and increased thirst, which can cause dehydration and seizures. So I didn't know that.
It's not related to diabetes, though?
I don't think so. I think it's like a different... I didn't look too much into it, but like that was the essential.
Oh, I'm just...
Yeah, no, it is.
I've never heard of that before.
He did eventually get a high school equivalency diploma and followed in his father's footsteps to become a police officer. John Africa was born Vincent Leapart. He was born on July 26th in 1931. I'm just going to let you guys know that I will be referring to him as John Africa. He didn't change his name until 1972, but for the sake of continuity, I just figure I'll refer to him by the name he chose as opposed to the name he was born with.
I think that's fair. That's probably what he would have wanted.
Exactly. He's not a perfect man, but he's definitely better than Frank Rizzo, so we'll go with that.
That bar is very
low. It's a low bar. That's a bar just laying on the ground.
The bar is subterranean.
So he grew up in West Philadelphia.
Born and raised.
Thank you. He was one of 10 children born to Frederick and Lenny May, which, oh my god, adorable name.
I do. I love it.
I know, Lenny May.
Lenny May.
Love that name. It's amazing.
Me too.
So, unfortunately, she died when John was young.
When she died, you mean?
Yeah, so she died in her early 40s. I guess she had been in the hospital. John essentially thought that the hospital killed her, and he made that very clear to people. He's not a fan.
To be fair, the track record that
people of color
our
have.
medical system, especially women of color in the United States with healthcare system,
they don't fare well. It's unfortunate.
It hasn't changed, I would say, not a bit. In fact, in some ways, I think it's probably worse.
Actually, I can agree with
only
that.
because it's in some ways it's more covert now.
Yeah. They're a little bit more insidious about it.
That's what I feel like.
John did struggle in school. It was determined that he had an IQ of 79, which, again, I don't necessarily think that IQs are necessarily a indicator of intelligence, because there's different types of intelligence. He just wasn't book smart. He didn't learn in that way, but he obviously had ideas that people liked and were interested in. He was a social smart, a charismatic smart.
He was charismatic, yeah.
So, again, he dropped out at 16, and at 18 he was drafted into the army during the Korean War and would serve over a year. And that's where the similarities end. They both dropped out of school, they both were part of the military, they both served. Boom, done. So, Rizzo joined the police force in 1943. He was an imposing presence at 6'2" and 250 pounds. Big dude. Rizzo rose up the ranks and became captain of the 19th District and was deputy commissioner from 1963 to 1967 and commissioner from 1967 to 1971. His time on the force can be explained by his personal philosophy, which was, and I quote, "The way to treat criminals is spacco il capo," which is Italian for split the head. Yep.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Don't like him.
No.
All right.
No. Frank is no good. So
I've formed an opinion now.
To say he was an aggressive officer is kind of an understatement.
Yeah.
This is just kind of a little thing I put in here because of how arrogant he is. He was very boastful about the police force in Philadelphia. He once stated that he had the toughest force in the world and that the department was strong enough to invade Cuba. Yeah. He thought that his force could invade Cuba. All right. On May 1st, 1965, Kenneth Sullum, aka Freedom Smitty, which is just awesome, who was active in the civil rights movement in Philadelphia, was one of approximately 25 protesters. He was there with the NAACP chapter of Philadelphia, which was led by Cecil B. Moore at the time.
That's a great name.
Oh, it sounds like an old-fashioned movie star name, like Cecil B. Moore.
Or a song, like a Beach Boys song.
Yeah, I could see it. They were outside Girard College, which at the time was a boarding school for poor orphaned white boys.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. They were marching for equality. The campus itself was on 40 acres and was surrounded by 10-foot walls. Rizzo showed up to the scene with hundreds of uniformed officers to stop the protesters from going over the walls. Hundreds of uniformed officers versus 25 protesters.
Sounds like somebody's overcompensating.
He's got the best force in the world.
Well, emphasis on the word force.
No, I'm just thinking of Yoda.
Why?
He uses the force.
Okay, that makes sense. I was picturing him dressed as Yoda. Anyway.
Oh my god! Oh, Frank Rizzo as Yoda. Hilarious. Oh, that's kind of demeaning.
I'm sorry?
That's a little demeaning to Yoda.
Rude that is.
Yeah. So yeah, he showed up with hundreds of uniformed police officers to stop 25 protesters. Rizzo's treatment of protesters, and especially people of color, ranged from beatings with fists or nightsticks to running them over with motorcycles to keeping the car running, causing people to get sick from the carbon monoxide.
What?
He did that.
When was this?
1965. I'm just going to read this passage from the Philadelphia Inquirer article written by David Gambacorta and Barbara Lake because I think it sums up Rizzo's brutal treatment of people he viewed as criminals but were really, in reality, expressing the constitutional right to protest. In 1967, when Rizzo was police commissioner, Salam was one of a handful of protesters who handcuffed himself outside the post office at 30th and Market Streets to fight for equal hiring practices. The cops came and cuffed them with their arms between their legs, so they had to hop to the police wagon. Quote, "You couldn't walk like a person," he said. When they stumbled out of the wagon, the white officers had formed two lines on either side of the ramp, cursing them with racial slurs and saying, "You want freedom? Come through then," he said. Then they beat us. They were hitting us so hard, it was like running a gauntlet. The nightsticks were long and wooden, but inside there was a bar of steel. Some were so worn out, and the steel was exposed. When the steel hit the ground, you could see sparks. I thought, they're trying to kill us. That was the end of the passage.
Oh my God.
So that was the kind of treatment under Rizzo's command as police commissioner that people of color, protesters, anybody who disagreed with him would basically get.
I'm upset with how similar that sounds to what was happening in the streets when George Floyd was killed.
Yeah, things don't change. Things don't change.
Meanwhile, we have people protesting, legally protesting, not to wear masks, not to have vaccine mandates. They're showing up at Capitol buildings with guns, and they're not getting their asses kicked.
There's they were talking about on the news last week the woman who went to vote because she had previously been charged with something. She went to get her right to vote reinstalled, and she went to all the correct people. She had the correct documentation, but like because of an error it didn't go through, and she was arrested and has been sentenced to 6 years in jail for trying to vote, versus the 4 people who voted illegally with under other people's names, and they got like time served or like a month in jail. You know, she's black.
And what's the difference between
white.
them?
They're white. So yeah, there's a difference.
Fucking Kyle Rittenhouse.
Don't even get me started.
Oh, don't get me started, because that motherfucker's out walking
gallivanting, and he should be in jail. He should be in jail. All right.
He should not have been at that.
He should never have been there. That was stupid. It was a stupid choice.
Bad parenting.
Yeah, it's bad everything. All right, so we're gonna step away from Rizzo for a little bit. I think we both need a cool down, which is why I put this break in here. So we're gonna move on to.
Is it a dance break?
It is a dance break. All right, let's step away from Frank for a little bit and talk about John Africa.
Yay!
After he returned from his time fighting the Korean War, he married Dorothy Clark. She would help him read and write, but unfortunately their marriage didn't last. She did later say that there was nothing remarkable about him or their marriage, that he was just like a normal guy. So
yeah,
this is obviously before everything else happened.
It's kind of what you want, right?
Like it just didn't work out, but there was nothing wrong with him. After the marriage fell apart, Africa moved to the Powelton neighborhood. I don't know if I said that right, but I'm going to just go with Powelton neighborhood in 1971. Near the University of Pennsylvania.
Oh.
So the area at the time, possibly still, was a multicultural neighborhood, and a lot of activism was taking place there, which is kind of a perfect fit for Africa. Not long after moving in, year in 1972, that he, along with Donald Glassy, would form MOVE. Glassy was a student at the university. He would help Africa write basically his guidelines for MOVE. Glassy said of Africa, he was very gentle. and seemed to be a warm, loving type person. He felt that Africa had some wonderful ideas and offered to write them down. This offer would turn into a 300-page book known as the Guidelines or the Teachings of John Africa. This book that contained a lot of anti-science and anti-technology, but also taught the inherent value of all living things, strict vegetarianism, and lessons on anti-corruption. I understand where he's coming from with the anti-technology and the anti-science. He thought his mom was killed in a hospital. That's pretty traumatic when you're a kid who doesn't really understand what's going on. But
right.
I don't agree with the anti-science or anti-technology thing necessarily. That's just me. But I do think I'm sure that there were some good ideas in there, just not those.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with anything, there's bad.
There's good and bad.
Or questionable, maybe not even to assign good or bad to it, but questionable. I mean, I think the argument could obviously be made by many people that there are things that have been done for our sake medically that have been questionable, especially when it comes to like cloning.
Yeah.
Understandable, even if you don't agree with it, whether you agree with it or not. I can see questioning anything like that.
I agree. I agree.
All things in moderation.
Couldn't have said it better myself. As the movement grew bigger, Africa grew more controlling.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, he is essentially a cult leader, but like...
We've seen how that goes.
Yeah. Well, at least he didn't molest any children or purposely kill anybody.
Or keep his wife's body on ice for 6 months.
Nope, he never did that. Never did that. So, in 1973, Move relocated to a house on Pearl Street and began to participate in several stunts that drew the attention of federal authorities, which worked at least on a local level, as Rizzo, by then he was mayor, had instructed the new commissioner to surveil Move. One such stunt had members handcuff themselves to talk show host Mike Douglas while he was in his studio. They also protested animal cruelty at zoos, the education system, and police brutality.
Okay, so, those are all fair things to protest.
Yeah. I agree with them on several of those.
Yeah, and the problems that he was, probably experiencing were because, like you had said, he learned how to read and write from his wife
and
ex-wife, not school. Some of those problems are because of how taxes are allocated for education, meaning that if you're from an affluent school, you get more tax funding because the money comes from the community, and that is what keeps poor neighborhoods poor.
Yep. That's perfectly stated. Yeah, it's quite the problem.
I'm going to shout this out just in case anyone is ever interested in going down the rabbit hole on that particular topic. There's a book called Savage Inequalities by Jonathan Kozol, Kozol. Okay. I'm not exaggerating when I say that changed how I look at the world completely when I read it. So read it. It's very good. It's outdated, but still,
I'm sure,
unfortunately,
I'm sure since things haven't changed, I'm sure it's still
not as much as they should. No.
Exactly.
So, anyway.
All right. So, in 1970, after several police shootings, one being fatal, Rizzo ordered a raid on Philadelphia's Black Panthers. 6 people were handcuffed, placed against the wall, and stripped naked. It was all captured in photographs taken by the media. He later said, "They're a little angry. They were humiliated. We took off their pants to search them."
Frank said that?
Yeah.
Fuck Frank. That more than a little humiliating. What?
It's degrading them as humans. It's
right. It's treating them like animals.
I feel like it's treating them worse than animals. That's just terrible.
Well, treating them how he probably treated animals.
Probably. He was not a good man. All right, so between 1972 and 1978, due to heightened surveillance of Move, police made 193 arrests of members, and 93 of them made it to court. In August of 1978, police attempted to evict Move from their Pearl Street location, which led to a standoff and a shootout. As a result, there were several injuries and one death of Officer James J. Ramp. 9 members of Move, known as the Move 9, were convicted for Ramp's death. 2 of the members died in prison. It was Merle and Phil Africa. They both changed their last name to Africa. I think at this point, a lot of the members of Move had changed their last name to Africa. as they were like a big family.
Because they're seeing themselves like
Exactly.
a family. Yeah. Before you move on, I have a question. Is MOVE an acronym?
I never really looked that up. I just thought it was just called MOVE.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was just curious. It sounds like it would be.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was, but I never, in all the articles I read about MOVE, I never saw anything mentioned about it being an acronym for something.
Okay. Just curious.
On a side note, though, the last of the MOVE 9 were released in February of 2020. So they just
now?
They just got out of prison like 2 years ago.
So they got out of prison and then immediately went into lockdown.
Which is like, slightly less strict prison.
I mean, I'm glad they weren't in prison for that because, Jesus.
Yeah, so...
Prisons I've seen really terrible.
Ooh, yeah.
That sucks. That's so sad.
They lost like a huge chunk of their life. A huge chunk of their life. Because that was what, 1978? Yeah, August of 1978. So from 78 to 2020. Absolute bullshit.
Wild.
So... Inside the police department, there were investigations into reports of disturbing practices, some of which included shooting of nonviolent suspects. In 1978, police had shot 17 unarmed suspects and killed 8, beating people while they were in cuffs, and implementing a system that ensured civilian complaints never made it far enough to be looked into. Again, they could say that about some police offices in this country still. Many police offices in this country.
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Did you hear about at some point you have to look at the situation and be like,
okay, this was 1978. This is not changed. What is going on?
Nothing has changed.
Nothing is changing. What is going on? Why aren't things changing? You have to look into these things.
Because the minute something happens to get momentum, like they started getting momentum, and then fucking Reagan was put in office, and he fucking undid everything. And then years and years and years go by, and then we get Obama. Same damn thing.
So, this will not come as a surprise, but Rizzo loved Nixon. Yeah,
of course.
Not a surprise.
Shocker.
Yeah, not a surprise. So, in 1981, Africa and MOVE relocated again to a house on Osage Avenue. After several complaints from neighbors, police obtained permission from the mayor's office on May 13, 1985. Police moved to evict MOVE. When the members did not comply, it developed into an armed standoff. It is said that this standoff, the police discharged 10,000 rounds at the house. 10,000 rounds.
That is the very definition of excessive.
That's just step one of excessive force. This gets so much worse. So, I'm just going to rip this Band-Aid off real quick. In the end, the police used state helicopter to drop Tovek and C4 explosive on the house, killing 6 adults, including John Africa himself, 5 children, destroying 61 houses, and leaving over 250 people without a home. There were 2 survivors from MOVE in the house, Bertie and Ramona Africa. They escaped with their lives, but with terrible burns. They were actually indicted and sent to prison after that.
The 2 that escaped?
Yeah, they were,
Rizzo should have been indicted and sent to prison.
The problem is that at this point, Rizzo was not in office and he was not part of the police force. So this kind of force was remnant of the force that he helped build because of his influence and his time on there. He was in the police force from 1943 to 1971 because he was the mayor from 71 to 1980, I believe.
So it was the culture.
It was the culture, yeah.
Had
pushed it, so
continued beyond his time.
His influence continued past his time because he was mayor for 2 terms, and then he tried to run for a 3rd term and couldn't. But I'll get into that.
He wasn't mayor at the time of the bombing.
No, he was out of office by 81.
Oh, okay, I thought he was. Okay,
he was not. But again, his influence over how the police was run and everything still remained.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to shake that sort of influence.
Were the people that passed from the bombing all part of MOVE, or were the neighboring houses that were affected?
The neighboring houses...
Did they also lead to fatalities?
Those houses had been evacuated ahead of time. So all the people that died were part of MOVE.
So basically they could have left, but then they were
Well,
not leaving
they
because...
weren't letting them out because were shooting at the house anytime somebody tried to leave.
Oh.
They basically
right.
They decided before this happened that nobody was getting out alive.
This is why police departments shouldn't have access to things like that. There's no reason for a police department to have access to bombs.
Nope, absolutely not. So, I'm almost done. I have like half a page left. And then I never want to think about Frank again.
Yeah, fuck him.
Post-bombing, 2 grand jury investigations, a civil suit, and a report described it as reckless, ill-conceived, and hastily approved. No shit.
Duh.
So,
yeah.
Final thoughts. John Africa was a cult leader. His motive started off well, but they did end up going too far. I mean, he was preaching all life was important, but he was also stockpiling weapons to an insane degree. I'm not saying he was innocent. Yeah. I'm not saying Move was innocent. They were stockpiling weapons for this sort of situation. They did seem antagonistic towards neighbors, but they didn't deserve this.
Well, I also have a hard time blaming them.
No, I'm not blaming them
for stockpiling weapons. No. I mean, I'm just saying clearly they had a reason to be uncomfortable and worried.
Exactly. They did what they had to. I'm not saying they're innocent. I'm also not saying they're guilty. Their reaction,
it's more complex.
Their reaction is a reaction to something else that's going on. It's not like, hey, we're going to do this, and then this other stuff happens, so now we're going to continue to do this. Like,
right.
There's this.
They had justified complaints.
I mean,
and if they had been treated as people,
yeah,
who have reason to be upset, and that had facilitated change of any kind, all of that rest of that stuff would not have come to pass, most likely.
I think so, yeah. I think it's a fair assessment. Just going to lay some things out about John Africa. I think a lot of what he was teaching was good. There's obviously some bad in it. I'm going to kind of jump the line a little bit here. So, he was a cult leader. His motive started out well, but he did go too far at times. Like I said, Glassy made the comment that he was becoming more controlling, which is true. And that seems to be about the time things started to go downhill for them. It was found out that he would order children to leave their parents if they did not follow his beliefs and condoned physical punishment. In 1984, his sister called him legally insane. So that was before his death. While he did preach environmental balance and the end to reactionary violence, he did also stockpile weapons. If it weren't for the state-sanctioned bombing, John Africa may not have the legacy that he has now. Despite his flaws, he is still looked upon pretty positively, and I can see why. I mean, a lot of his beliefs were positive, not all of them, but...
And I don't even know that
I think a lot of this negative stuff was like the last few years of Move, not the beginning, because the beginning sounded pretty peaceful, so... Mm-hmm.
Well, and I don't think it necessarily people are even focusing on what John Africa's motives or goals were so much as
stood for.
What his ending was and how unjustified the response to whatever it was he was doing. I mean, at the end of the day, people are going to remember the response more than anything he did, just because of how overblown it was.
Yeah, this is how he has become kind of a martyr in the whole thing. It is interesting that the police would think that bombing a house over an eviction is necessary. That part...
I can't even imagine if I were like... I can understand. I've had neighbors where I'm like, oh my god, that guy's driving me crazy. I don't know how bad it would have to be for me to be like, I will go ahead and abandon my home so that you can bomb the block I live on. Yeah. Like, I can't imagine a scenario where I'd be like, this is cool. I'm leaving my house, and this is cool.
So,
go ahead and bomb our house.
I don't think that the neighbors were like, hey, this is how it's going to go. I think the police were like, this is going to take some force. You need to get out of here so that we can get these people out. And then they're like, well, they're not leaving because every time they try to walk outside, we shoot at them. So we should just bomb them. Let's just drop some C4 on this and just wipe the whole thing out. So... I'm just gonna...
I'd be interested in hearing, and maybe this exists, I might have to go looking for it, just a reaction from someone that was in the neighborhood, like, after the fact, after everything chilled out and they were living somewhere else, and they had time to reflect on everything.
It'd be interesting to hear that.
What they would feel about it after
I know
the fact.
there is a documentary on John Africa that I think is on Netflix. I think it is. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll have to look it up. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
Frank Rizzo, on the other hand, has not fared well at all. His legacy, well, some people I think still support him. I think he definitely still had his supporters, at least towards the end. I don't know if that still holds. I'm pretty sure that nobody likes him, or at least that's what I'm hoping. This made me laugh a little bit when I read this, but in 1997, the University of Illinois Chicago conducted a political survey that ranked mayors of major cities between 1960 and 1993. Rizzo ranked dead last, gaining the well-earned spot with 25 votes. That's 13 more than the next worst mayor, which was Dennis Kucinich of Cleveland. I am not even a little bit surprised that Richard J. Daley took this top spot because people in Chicago loved him. Along with being ranked the worst mayor, Frank Rizzo's statue, which was installed in 1998 in front of the Municipal Service Building in the city center, after it had been vandalized several times, the statue was ordered to be removed in June of 2020, and it has been removed, so it's gone.
Good.
And
I can't believe that they even got a statue. That's fucked.
No, the mayor of Philadelphia also, he's like, nobody should have a statue made of them. Not even, he's like, no mayor should have a statue.
Right.
Like, no mayor is that important. I did include some Frank Rizzo quotes at the bottom here, if you want me to read some of them.
No. Oh. Yes. I mean, no, but yes, but no, but yes.
Okay, so he, in some quotes, he slips into the third person. And so Frank Rizzo said,
never trust someone who talks about themselves in the third person. That's so cringy.
Absolutely true. Ashley always says that. So
does Yoda.
Yoda's king of third person. So Frank said of Frank, all Frank Rizzo has done all his life is protect people from criminals at great personal risk and discomfort. I don't think there was a lot of discomfort there for you, bud.
I'd like to show him some discomfort.
So that was very violent.
That's how I feel.
I appreciate it, and I agree with you. So I found that he said this twice, but I'm only going to say one quote, and it does involve a derogatory slur towards gay men, or towards LGBTQ. He was quoted not once, but at least twice that I could find of saying, when I'm finished with them, I'll make Attila the Hun look like a faggot. I'm not even entirely sure what that's supposed to mean, but it's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard. So, another quote.
That makes grab him by the pussy seem like child's play.
I mean, it kind of does. I mean,
who knew that was possible?
Don't like any of this. Alright, so another quote. I'll make you a rich man. I'll give you $5 for every liberal who jumps off the Walnut Street Bridge when I'm elected.
That sounds like...
This was a quote from when he was mayor. He said this was in regards to job creation, or like, I guess he hired a family. The first thing he did when he got into office was hire a family member for a position. This is the quote.
He and Donald Trump were cut from the same fucking cloth.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. The first thing I did after becoming mayor was make my brother Joe the first commissioner. A lot of people said that was nepotism. I don't know what that was. So I called my brother and I said, Joe, did you pick up anything when you were stationed in Japan? He's so dumb.
So he thinks
nepotism might be a disease.
He thinks nepotism is a venereal disease.
Think so. Yeah.
Ugh.
Okay. So
it hurts. It hurts. We're almost done, right?
Two more quotes and I am done. This is Frank on capital punishment. We've got to take the electric chair out of storage. I may do something in this area. At another point, I will personally pull the switch if they run out of people who want to do that. I'm available. That is also a very, like, Trumpy thing I think he would say.
This man was a psychopath. He's dead, right?
He died in I forgot to mention, he died in 1991 of a heart attack.
Good.
This was he did try. I don't know why I didn't say this because I thought I put it in my notes. He did try to run for mayor a third time because there was
Mm-hmm.
a statute of limitations, like you or not statute of limitations. What the fuck? There's like a term limit. That's the
Ah.
word I was looking for. He was looking. He was there was a term limit. He could only serve 2 terms. He petitioned the charter to change it. They didn't. So he obviously wasn't in office. And then he attempted to rebrand himself. I remember there were several quotes where his slogan was like "Vote White," just like
Oh my
I didn't even
god.
I wasn't even gonna mention it, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like I want to barf. So he did switch parties. He'd been a Democrat. He switched to Republican. And yeah, so he was in the middle of rebranding himself to run again as mayor when he died of a heart attack. So he was never able to finish that. And I still have one more quote. It's an easy one. On Nixon, I think he's the best president we've ever had. And I'm done.
Was that before or after Watergate?
I don't know what year he said that, but I'm officially lowering my notes so I don't have to look at them anymore. I'm done!
Fuck that
And
guy.
then Philly!
All I have to say is Godspeed to Philadelphia for getting it through that situation, and I hope to God some people that needed to learn some very important lessons from that situation.
I'm not gonna hold my breath,
But
unfortunately.
I know, but
That was,
it just makes me sad that so little has changed. It just feels so cyclical.
I mean, things don't change.
Had he been given the opportunity, he could have very easily also run for president.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we've already seen that happen.
I think it's probably for the best that he didn't have higher aspirations.
He was too busy terrorizing Philadelphia to do anything
honestly,
else.
it sounded like he enjoyed it. Wasn't any discomfort for him.
It really does. He sounds like a sadist.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Yeah. Okay, well,
I really hope the next story is a little bit less sad and frustrating.
I'm so sorry to do this to you guys.
It's okay. I think it's important to learn about these things. You know, that's the saddest thing about whitewashing our history and taking these kinds of stories out of the common knowledge vernacular is that we're just doomed to keep doing the same shit over and over again. Because I didn't hear about this until it was relevant to what was happening to us just a couple of years ago.
I didn't hear...
And that does not mean that anything changed. It just means that it came up in conversation again. You know what I mean?
I didn't hear about Frank Rizzo until a couple of years ago when I was listening to The Dollop, and they have a phenomenal 2-part episode on him. So if you want more information on him, they did a 2-part episode on him. They also did an episode on John Africa. So they do a great job with the research. So I didn't listen to them ahead of doing this podcast because I didn't want to take from their podcast, but I'm definitely gonna re-listen to them after this.
Yeah, me too. If I can stand it, I'll try.
It's hard. I mean, at least on the Dollop, they're really funny and they try and like lighten it a little bit, but it's heavy.
Well, we need to know these things too because we can't. Again, like I said, we can't change it unless we confront it head on.
Yeah, I agree.
Otherwise, we're just doomed to keep doing the same shit over and over again.
We ignore history, we're doomed to repeat it. It's because I can't even talk. I'm just like so drained. Like that was such a hard episode to get through.
It was, but I'm glad we talked about it because I'm hoping someone learns from it, and you know we keep these stories alive so that we can hold these types of people accountable.
And if we ever journey back to Philadelphia, there's still plenty to talk about.
I think we need to talk about the history of Philly cheesesteak.
Or maybe we'll talk about the Mayflower Madam next time.
Ooh, that sounds sexy.
I was gonna talk about Henry Box Brown, but I couldn't find enough information to make a full story out of it. But he was the guy who mailed himself from a southern state to Philadelphia in like a crate. I was like, this was during this this is pre-Civil War or maybe during the Civil War, but like, I mean, dude mailed himself out of danger and then fled to England for a couple years and became a magician. He was kind of awesome. Like, I wish I could have found more on him because he was like, it was so good. Yeah,
that's
he became
hysterical.
like a magician and like he was an abolitionist, but he did flee to England for like 10 years.
Who can
I
blame
would
him?
absolutely.
That sounds like a That sounds like a Looney Tunes episode, just like mailing yourself out of danger.
Honorable mention.
I could totally see the Bugs Bunny doing that to get away from him.
Honorable mention definitely goes to Henry Box Brown.
His name is even.
I mean,
perfect.
like, Box was like a nickname because he, shipped himself.
Oh. I'm like, his mom saw a prophecy.
No, I should have gone. Sorry, it's Henry Box quotes Brown. So, I mean, like...
Well, that makes more sense.
Like I said, when I was doing research for this episode, looking through Philadelphia is like jumping through an Olympic-sized swimming pool and being like, all right, what do I pick? There's so much.
Yeah, that's good, but it's nice to know that we could, if we needed to, return to a city and still have more to talk about.
And I'll have notes ready in my Barbra Streisand.
Is that Barbra Streisand? She's staring right at me. Where did you get that?
Somebody I work with got it at a white elephant party, and he gave it to me over Christmas, like a year ago. So I am using my Barbra Streisand notebook to take notes.
Best sentence ever spoken.
And I don't think we can do any better, so let's find out where we're going to go next week.
Okay, yes, let's go far, far away from Philadelphia.
Yeah, let's pull out the GeoGuessr.
I like calling it the magical wheel.
Okay, let's spin the magical wheel.
It's got a very like Beatles, Henry the Horse feel to it. It makes me happy.
I can get into that. All right, spin the magical wheel, Jamie.
Okay.
And where are we going?
We're not going as far away as I kind of hoped we would.
Please tell me we're not staying in Pennsylvania. Okay.
No, we are crossing the river.
Oh no!
Trenton, New Jersey. Yeah, it's pretty much a Philly adjacent.
Oh boy. Well, hopefully there's no Frank Rizzo in there.
He couldn't be.
All right, well, I'm going to tell you.
Mayors don't cross borders ever.
Let's find out what we're going to talk about. And we're going to do... Ooh. It's a picker's choice. So a little bit of a mystery. We don't know what we're going to talk about next week.
I'm excited because I don't know fucking anything about Trenton, New Jersey.
Well, I can tell you.
This opens it up a little bit for me.
Neither do I.
I guess we will soon.
Yeah, we'll learn. Can't wait to hear what you dig up in Trenton.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'll meet you there next week.
See you there.
Happy wandering.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Wandering Chronicles podcast with your hosts, Ashley and Jamie. You can follow us on social media at Wandering Chronicles Pod on TikTok, Wandering Chronicles Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, or WND Chronicle Pod on Twitter. Or you can email us at wanderingchroniclespodcast@gmail.com. New episodes drop every Thursday. If you haven't already, please tell everyone you know to listen to our podcast. Your gynecologist, the head of the PTA at your kid's school, every single telemarketer that calls you, your postal worker, your veterinarian. I bet they listen to podcasts. Hey, thanks. Bye.
Keep it in your pants, okay?